So this is a continuation of this video up here, if you haven't watched that one yet. This was originally meant to be a 1 month later thoughts, but it's turned into a 2 month-ish, a little bit more than later thoughts. I'd like to tell you there's a particular order in which we're going to discuss things, but there's really not. It's just a bunch of things that I've written down over the past couple of months that have kind of made me think that's a good thing to talk about. So here we are. In the last video, I discussed how this kind of made me inspired to go out and shoot when I first got it. And that has not changed in one bit. To be honest, it's probably inspired me even more to shoot when I'm outside of this environment. I find when I'm home in my studio and what have you, and just regularly working, I don't go and shoot a ton anyway. It's more when I'm like out and about, going places, that's where I'm really inspired to shoot. And this is like all I want to bring. I don't want to bring anything else with me. And that is a hard thing to say as a photographer, because I'm so used to traveling with copious amounts of gear and lenses and constantly switching it out. And I tried when I went to Arizona with this to just bring this, nothing else. First time I've ever done that since I started this channel, however many years ago that was. And it was a joy. And I will do it again and again. The whole experience of using this, from looking through the EVF to viewing the photos on the back of the screen after I've taken them, to even using the LCD screen to compose images, all of that is just, it's lovely. I have zero complaints about using this camera in terms of experience. And I think that is a huge part of what you're buying into with Leica. That's what it seems like so far anyway. The whole thing with how sharp this lens is and the detail that you can get, and you can zoom into the images after the fact to really look at that detail, that still hasn't worn off. It's ridiculous how far you can zoom in. Honestly, like nothing else I've ever experienced. And I've tried a Hasselblad 100 megapixels, and this is only 60 or 62 megapixels, but this honestly feels like you get more detail when you're zoomed in. You'll see that I've actually added this little grip on here, which I bought. I can't remember the name of it, but I'll link it below. I'm torn on whether I like this or not. It's a plate on the bottom there, which is Arca Swiss, which is meant to match the black of the body. It's a little bit more matte, if I'm honest. And I bought a couple of other ones as well. There's a wooden one and a just carbon fiber one, I think. But yeah, I'm torn whether I like this. It does add a decent amount of grip to the camera, but I don't know if that was really much of a problem anyway. I really do like this fake Leica thumb grip that I ended up getting. Now, although yes, this is an autofocus camera and you can use the autofocus, and it's good, it's okay, it's not nearly as good as a Sony camera, I find myself shooting manually a lot more. The whole experience, as I discussed in this video up here before, shooting manually with this is really, really good. The timing of when you swap to manual focus and then you turn the manual focus ring and it zooms in for you and you can see everything, and then you just tap the shutter and it zooms back out. Like, it's all so perfectly done that the whole manual focus experience is like nothing else in terms of a camera I've ever tried. So I find myself shooting manually a lot more. Also because the autofocus doesn't really, like with my Sony cameras, I can just kind of point it at stuff and I know what it's going to focus on. With this, it's sometimes a little bit of a mystery. It's not quite as good. So maybe that's why, but also the experience of manual focusing is really nice and nothing to shy away from. A weird one, and there's a few of these throughout, especially when you spend as much as you do on this camera, it's not something I'd expect. But there was one time that I turned this camera on and it fully reset itself. Like everything. It was like the camera's brand new again, and it was weird, and I didn't understand why. I had to literally go in and set it up again, and the Leica screen that comes on the very first time that you get this camera, when you load it up for the first time, it has the red Leica logo that comes on and all that, and it did that. I'm not sure why, and I was a bit worried because I thought, well, maybe all my images are gone, but weirdly they weren't. They were all in there still, and it just had reset itself. It's only happened once, hasn't happened again. Not sure why that was. Maybe that's a firmware thing, but it did happen. I'm very aware that although I have the curtains pulled over here, the light is pretty harsh outside today, and it could very well be changing. So it is what it is. One thing that I do like with Fuji, with my GFX 50R, is that you can play about with the film simulations. Saying that, I often tend to find I just shoot at the same ones once I find ones that I like. And to begin with, I didn't love that you couldn't really play about with them on here. Like the Leica looks are things you transfer from your phone and you put them on the camera. Weirdly, you can't transfer all of them. You can do all but one and then it's full. So if you want to get the other one back on, you have to delete one of the other Leica looks before you can put it back on. But I digress. You can't edit them. And I thought that was going to be a pain to begin with. But what I've been finding is it's like shooting with a prime lens with a fixed lens. Having less is sometimes better. It means I'm not flicking through them all, thinking, well, what if I could change that or change that? It's like, that's what it looks like. That's what I've got. And I either use it or I don't. Now, with the Leica looks, what I noticed going from the desert in Arizona to New York City, the Leica looks that I liked in the desert are not the same Leica looks that I like when I'm in New York City. So I'm definitely finding that certain ones look better in certain situations. And that's probably got very much to do with the fact that desert is a lot of neutral colors, very pale, muted colors. And New York City is, I wouldn't say vibrant, but very different colors. So the colors react differently in the Leica looks. That's probably why I like one more than the other. For reference here, I mostly used the chrome in Arizona in the desert environment there, but I occasionally used classic. For the black and white in the desert, I was using the blue. Now, in New York City, I much preferred contemporary and classic. I really did not like how chrome looked in New York City. And then I was using a lot more of the sepia as well. This video is sponsored by Motion Array, who have millions of creative assets that you can use for your projects, one of which is now an AI voiceover generator. And I want to show you just how quickly and easy it is to generate a voiceover that you can then use in your projects. So you have a ton of different options of voiceovers that you can use, and you can just filter them by category there and style that you want to use, by gender if you want to. Here's how a few sound.
Well, I'll tell you. There's nothing quite like the simple life out here on the ranch.
Here, in the heart of the ancient forest.
Start your day right with our delicious, nutritious yogurt.
Once upon a time, I needed a voiceover. So let's select Southern Charm and generate and tell you how far along it is. And once it's done, you can preview it. There we go.
Once upon a time, I needed a voiceover.
What you can also do is change the speed. You can also change the emotion. So let's say I want it more angry. Regenerate that.
Once upon a time, needed a voiceover.
So you can see how that just changes the tone and the inflection of the voice, so you can really adapt it for whatever project you're working on. And once you've got it how you want it to sound for your project, you can just tap the little download button there, insert that into your project, and it's as quick and easy as that. You're good to go. To get access to the AI voiceover tool, if you're already a Motion Array subscriber to a monthly or a yearly plan, you can just upgrade to the everything plan, which will get you access to it. You can also just get the AI voiceover plan on its own, or if you're completely new to Motion Array, you can sign up for the everything plan. That will get you the voiceover generator, all the other assets, including the stock footage, the templates, the plugins, everything they have. I'll pop a link down below for you to try out Motion Array. I do find the autofocus in low light situations struggles. It's not the best, and maybe that's what's forcing me more to shoot manual as well. Probably could have talked about this earlier, but as I said, there's no order to this. Yeah, it's not the best. If you're coming from a Sony camera, Fuji camera, Canon, and you're used to certain low light autofocus abilities, like, you won't be too happy with this. That's all I have to say on that. Now, I've been using this very much as a point and shoot as I had before, just using this dial here to compensate, give me a brighter image or a darker image, ISO set to automatic with limits and shutter speed and all that. The camera does everything for me. I just pick the exposure that I want basically with that dial. But if you want to go into a specific mode, it's not as intuitive as it is with a Sony, a Canon, and Nikon, and that takes a little bit of getting used to. I'm not going to try and explain it to you, but if you get one of these, you'll see what I mean. It's not the most intuitive to go into like aperture priority or shutter priority. It's not the best, and I don't think it's actually meant to be shot that way. In my opinion, when you get this camera and you start shooting with it, you realize that the way I'm shooting with it now and just compensating, it's actually designed more to shoot that way than anything else. It wants to shoot in that method, and you might find yourself just shooting like that too. Another weird issue that happened, I took some photos and I knew the photos were there, and I was scrolling back through my photos and they weren't there anymore. They disappeared, like 20 of them. There was a gap in the numbering system. You can physically see that it went from like, I can't remember what it was, from like 20 to like 50. there was just a big gap and the photos weren't there. And I was really worried because there were some good photos in there. And I don't know what caused the problem. Did the photos disappear from the camera? Yes, they did. But when I popped the SD card into the computer, they're all still there, the JPEGs and the RAWs. Yes, I've been shooting JPEGs and RAWs on this still, even though I'm just literally shooting JPEGs. We'll talk more about that in a bit, but they disappeared. So I don't know what happened with that. I don't even know how that would happen. The memory card hasn't come out of the camera other than to check to see if the photos were still there. Even to this day, they're still not in there. So I don't know what caused that. It seems like there is some software bugs and some quirks. I think there's a firmware update. Maybe I should try updating it, but I wouldn't expect that kind of thing to happen with a camera that costs as much as this does. I've got something written down here about sleep mode, I guess, when the camera goes to sleep, and that you can only wake the camera with the shutter and no other buttons. But I'm trying to think actually, and I don't even think any other camera does that anyway, but I don't know why I wrote that down, but I did. It's there. I will also say that the size isn't a problem, but it's definitely bigger than you would think it is with that lens on the front there to carry around with you compared to the X100-6. Like, there's no way this thing's fitting in your pocket. It has to go around your neck or around your shoulder, however you want to carry it. Even fitting in a bag, sometimes it takes up more space than you think it would because of the size of that lens. So I've been using this strap that's this long. Kind of sits just right about here. But what I like is just having it like this, and then you can just kind of pull it up. This is the actual, sorry, I realized there that you're not going to have good sound. This is the actual Leica one that comes with the camera when you buy it. And I've tried a bunch of other ones, different lengths. I've got some short ones that come down here, but this really is kind of like the perfect length, the one that came with the camera. So maybe they did a decent amount of research into what the perfect length is for shooting with something like this, and it is perfect for what it is. I posted some photos with this after I got back from Arizona, and yes, I had a lot of beautiful light, and the desert does look stunning. It's probably one of my favorite places in the world to shoot. But I've never had a response like that to photos I've posted on Instagram, which for me says a lot about this camera, coupled with the fact that not one of those photos is edited. Not any of the photos that you've seen in this whole video, none of those are edited. They are all straight out of the camera JPEG. I've made it very clear before that I'm not a huge fan of editing photos. Video, fine, like coloring video, but for photos, I don't enjoy the process of it. It's just a little bit overwhelming. I feel like with a RAW, there's so many different routes that you can go to make an image look a specific way, or you can really change an image completely, and I'm not sure I'm a fan of that. I like just being able to capture the image as it happened, expose it how I want it to look, and kind of bake that in with the Leica look to the JPEG. And that's what I've been doing, and every single photo, as I said, throughout this video has been JPEGs. And the fact that I can receive the kind of response that I got on Instagram, when I don't really post a lot of photos, mostly reels, that really opened my eyes to be like, okay, there is something kind of special about the way this produces images and the APO lens, and there's something there. Even if people don't know what it is, there is definitely something there. The counter argument to this and some comments that I got is, well, yeah, but I could go and compose these photos in the same light with any camera with a similar lens. And I think you possibly could, but there's a couple of arguments there to go against this counter argument. And that is, A, they're JPEGs. So depending on what camera you're using, you're not going to get that same color, you're not going to get that same Leica look, so you're going to have to do work to get that image. I didn't have to do work. I shot it as is. It was a JPEG. The other part to that story is, would you have shot it, or would I have shot it with any other camera, given that I don't enjoy using other cameras in the same way that I use this? I would not have potentially brought a bigger camera with me, like one of my Sony cameras, to shoot the same thing, because the experience isn't the same. It's not as small, it's not as compact. I don't enjoy using it as much for things that aren't pro work. This I enjoy using for fun. So yes, you probably could take it with any other camera, but you would have to do work. Would you have taken it because you didn't bring the camera with you because you don't enjoy the experience? That kind of couples this camera. It's the experience and what you're capturing for me, the JPEGs. That's what I'm seeing so far as being the big draws to this camera. I chatted with Brandon Talbot the other day, and he said to me he's impressed, or something along the lines of like, he's impressed that I kept it. And I guess it's a thing for people when they've never had a Leica before, that they're very drawn to try one out, and they get it and they're like, man, it's not for me. And they end up selling it. So I suppose you fall into one of two buckets. You're either the person that ends up becoming a Leica shill fanboy, or you just decide it's not for you because you don't get it. And that seems to be a big thing. You just don't get this camera. You don't understand why you'd spend that amount of money on it. And I think those are the same people that are probably commenting things like, well, I could take that photo with any camera. But a note on that, there was a gap of a couple of weeks where I got back from Arizona and things got busy and I had videos to make, and I really didn't pick up this camera to shoot with it at all. And there was a couple of times I thought, it was like, do I really need that $10,000 Canadian camera sitting there? Could I just sell it? Because there's a lot of people that want this camera. And then when I went away again, immediately I picked up this camera, turned it on, and was like, oh no, I should not do that. Like, this is, although I might not use it for everything all the time, although it's always with me in my little bag inside my Peak Design duffel, which is my EDC bag that I bring with me every day. I might not always be using it, but when I want to use it, I am very happy that I brought it and I am using it. So that's where I'm at right now. I have no intentions of selling this. Am I convinced so far? Yes, very much so. Well, one thing I've noticed, and one thing I just think would make this, for me, the absolute most perfect camera that I could ask for with everything that's out there, with everything I've tried. This thing is slow. And I like the GFX 50R being slow because it slows me down in the way that I take photos. This is the same, but it's also just slow. It's slow to turn on. Sometimes it feels like it's frozen, but it hasn't. It's just slow to load the menus. It's slow after you take a picture to look back at the photo that you took, which is weird for a camera that costs this much. And I know that's probably software, and I know I should probably update the firmware. And we will. Could have done it before this video, tested it really, but I didn't. We'll do a 6 months later video, I guess. But yeah, it is a slow camera to use, both in terms of slowing you down, but physically, functionally to handle and have to take photos with. Now, New York City, this camera was one of the stills cameras I bought. The other camera that I bought with me was the GFX 50R because I use that camera just for X-Pan, nothing else. I am obsessed with that as an aspect ratio. I just would love to have X-Pan in here. I don't know why it's not in here, because it is in the SL series of cameras, which I got to try the other day for the first time. And yeah, that's fun. I would really love to see that in here. Is it likely to happen? Probably not. They're probably reserving that just for their SL line of cameras. But there we go. That's what for me would make this. That's it really, if they could do that. I've also been printing a bunch of my photos with, one second, let me get it. This little printer right here, which I should probably do a whole video about. It's called the Selfie CP1500, and it's battery powered. You can buy a battery for it, you can plug it in, and it creates these little images that are on this paper that the edges just kind of very satisfyingly snap. Then you can peel them off, they're like perforated. But yeah, I've been really enjoying the process of taking the photos that I shot with this camera and just going through and printing them. And there's a bunch here, and this printer, for what it is, produces like this ridiculous image clarity and sharpness, and the color on there, like it's really, really good for what it is, and it's just a really nice way to look back at some of the images that I took. And it's cheap too. This printer itself, I think, was like $120. I'm sure for Black Friday and Boxing Week it'll be even cheaper. And the paper and the toner, not toner, but there's like a toner cartridge, I guess. It's cheap. These are just as good as, if not higher quality than, my local print shop for little 6x4s here. And the clarity is ridiculous for what it is. Like, I would not expect these prints to come out of this printer. It's something I'd highly recommend you try out. You've seen all these images before, but yeah, I've just been enjoying printing them up and looking at them and enjoying them after the fact. That's something I've never done before. So that is what I think so far of the Leica Q3 43, my updated thoughts and opinions. Really enjoying it. Really, really enjoying it. Stay tuned for more, I guess. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.